guys, Rasati here in Singapore. Thank you so much once again joining me on this Night Owl podcast. You know what? I've been thinking a lot about the podcast itself, the names, the titles, like how in the hell do I come up with this stuff? And usually it's like between three and five words that kind of sum up. It's like the bullet point to this whole damn podcast episode. Obviously, I'm going to give you tons of examples. I'm going to give you examples from my life. I'm going to help you understand, the various ways that this could be misinterpreted or interpreted. I'm trying to give you as much perspective as I can in about 10 to 15 minutes. But more than that, I know a lot of people actually look for podcasts based on the title. And you know what? I don't really have a strategy for that. I'm kind of winging it, right? And I think that it's effective. I'm trying to make it catchy, but for the most part, I want to be straight to the point. I don't want to beat around the bush. So if I can condense everything, and get the essence of the episode, that's how I name the title, but it doesn't always work in my favor. Sometimes I name stuff and as I go to upload it, I will rename it. Sometimes I've had situations where somebody called me and said, you know what, I was listening to this episode, but that's not at all what it was about. Like, what in the hell were you thinking? So I have to go back and edit it and see if I can find a better way to name the title itself. A lot of times I also find that during the course of the podcast, because it's not scripted, I don't have like notes in front of me of what I should say, what I shouldn't say, nothing like that. It's off the cuff. I let spirit kind of direct me. It's whatever occurs to me as I'm talking about these things. So as I'm speaking, as I have this particular idea in my head, I do get downloads at the same time. I do have, inspiration that kind of pops up, and I try to incorporate that as much as possible. And then I also try to keep in mind the fact that I started off with a specific idea in mind, so I don't veer off too much to the left or too much to the right, because otherwise, of course, I'll lose you all. And I'll probably lose myself too. But that's part of the reason sometimes it's really difficult for me to name the concept, name the podcast episode. Like how, I don't know, I just come up with a name. Recently, I've been trying to make sure that there's a central idea. I have been looking at posts that I like to share to my stories and Instagram. So those of you following me on Rasat1, thank you so much for the support. But you notice that there are certain things that I try to post and show you that, hey, this is okay. Thinking like this is completely normal. Questioning yourself and the people around you is okay as long as you're respectful about it. Diversifying your knowledge base is really, really helpful, because then you get more ideas that would really help you. Being able to change your mind about stuff is an okay thing. It should be more and more encouraged and inspired. It's the way you have growth, right? Taking risks, facing your fears, feeling the emotions rather than stuffing them down in the corner because you just don't have the time for the nervous breakdown that you deserve, right? So all of those things happen on a daily basis. There are so many aspects to life. For me, I have a lot that I resonate with. Fitness, health, as in like, nutritional health, body, mind, spirit, obviously. I love talking about emotions. I could talk about them all day long. I have my heroes that I try to follow and listen to as much as possible. I have lots of clients and friends that I listen to and engage in conversation with. I try to follow and encourage small businesses, local businesses. There's a lot that goes on. So honestly speaking, having a phone in my hand is just dangerous in general. So when it comes to naming a podcast, it could go one of 1,000 ways, honestly, because my brain is working at 1,000 miles a minute. At least it's what it feels like to me. When I started this episode, I wanted to make sure I was talking about naming podcast episodes, mostly because the one I just finished recording and sent to myself to be able to upload on my computer, I definitely named 3 times already. The original title, oh my gosh. The original title for that particular episode was The 5 Love Languages. And then I started thinking, well, it's not just about the 5 love languages. It's more about why the 5 love languages, and more than just why, like why do I teach it first? So I had to go through a couple of iterations, and finally I just decided to make it simple and to the point. Why love language first? I hope that makes sense. And I hope that's finally what I called it. I'll have to go back and check. But this is why I'm saying this. When you name a podcast episode or a blog title, you're trying to get as many eyes on it as possible, right? You're trying to hit those keywords for Google searches. You're trying to make sure that it's succinct and to the point so people understand whether or not they want to listen to the rest of it or not. And for the most part, you're trying to be clever, right? There's nothing better than a pun. There's nothing better than wordplay and alliteration sometimes. So all of those little literary devices that we learned throughout high school, come into play right now because it catches the reader's eye, it gets their interest piqued, and you wonder what else is on this particular episode. So this is why I struggle sometimes. Sometimes I overthink it, sometimes I overshoot, sometimes I simplify it, and then later on I think of a clever quip and I go to change it. More than that, though, because this is like, what, 820 something, I worry about whether I've already named something like this before. Luckily for me, because I've titled the podcast as well as numbered it, even if I had the same exact title, there's a different number to it. So that part keeps me safe, but I still do wonder if I'm being paranoid, if I'm overthinking, if I'm being like overly anxious about this, if I'm being too intellectual. Would I miss the average person? So these are the things I worry about, and these are the things that go into me considering a name for an episode, or how to actually get people to listen or pique their interest, right? So something to consider if you're starting out on a podcast or a blog or video titles, like any of those things. I think this is relevant for all of that. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments. If you have any considerations or like ideas of something else that I may consider, oh my God, I love you. Please let me know. But for the most part, what I try really hard to do is be myself in all that I can, use well-known phrases possibly to help, allude to the idea that's being described or explained inside the podcast episode itself. And worst case scenario, I do searches sometimes just to see, what pops up. When Google completes the search, what is it that they're like completing the search with? What is it that's relevant at the moment? What is it that people are looking for answers for, if that makes any sense? So anyway, in the meantime, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will catch you again soon. But yeah, loads to consider. As always, I love you. Bye.